Hey everybody, wanted to preface this interview with Brendan Devane with the teaser trailer. That's why I'm jump scaring you right now to give you a heads up. It'd be a teaser trailer and then a normal intro into the interview. But it was a great time talking to Brendan Devane. I think you're really going to enjoy it. We hit a lot of fun topics and it's a pretty short interview, so it's not a giant time sink for you. So have a great time. Have a good day. See ya.
You need to pick up where your grandfather left off and seal that evil end forever.
Me?
Making it to the top is not worth your life. It's just not worth it.
Not always what you can see, it's what you can hear.
June 27th, in theaters and on digital.
Let's talk about your movie. You tell folks what it's about. I watched it. I liked it a lot, but I'd love to hear your tale of your movie.
Well, it's just what I would call like sorry, my dog has brought a squeaky toy down here.
That's okay. That's all right. Mine's
All
here somewhere too.
I'll have a collection here in a little bit. It's just a fun popcorn movie, I would call it. It's a little bit of genre bending. There's some horror, there's some action adventure, there's some thriller. For me, it's mostly a suspense of how I kind of looked at it. And yeah, it's just about a bunch of world-class rock climbers who go try to climb this wall that hasn't been climbed in years and years because of tragedies that keep on occurring on it. And they meet this kind of entity up there that messes with their minds, and the fun starts.
Yeah, and in watching it, it kind of gave me a really like a folklore vibe that I really dug. It was just like there's a lot of you could tell there's history to it, and I really enjoyed that. And I believe you're the writer as well. Did you pull on other folklore tales to kind of get inspiration from for like the different things that were
Um,
there?
that's an interesting question because if because I've already written the sequel, and
Yeah.
it's really based a lot on folklore and myth. The sequel is, but to go back to this film, ever since I was a little kid, I was always reading myths, Norse myths, Greek myths, just myths and stories and like you said, folklore like
Yeah.
that. And so definitely what was a base for it. The first draft of this was much more involved with a really big indigenous background story and stuff like that. And then of course, as you develop things, it gets pared down and pared down, pared down to what it finished with. But the it's tough for me because people ask like, how did you come up with the idea? And I say, well, I wish I got a bolt of lightning, because that's just, I don't, like inspiration. You get a spark of a little, just a little, maybe a little of idea, and then for me, I've got to build layers on it, and layers and layers and layers until it becomes like fully fledged. And for sure, folklore and myth was one of those layers that got involved.
Yeah. Speaking of another layer that was predominant, I mean, rock climbing, and you sprinkled in like professional rock climbers in the movie, which I thought was super cool. Like Alex Honnold was probably the biggest name that I recognized just because I watched his movie Free Solo and I really dug it. Um, but was it fun having those folks involved in the movie? Were they involved with making sure like your actors kind of looked professional? Is that the right way to probably to phrase it? But I think so. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely starting off, one of the main goals here was to present rock climbing in an authentic, accurate
Yeah.
way. And because that's typically not how films, present rock climbing or other extreme sports. Like, I mean, I love Cliffhanger just as much as the rest of people do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do rock climbing any good service. Neither does Vertical Limit. Very entertaining movie about climbing mountains. None of it is realistic, right? So for this, we definitely wanted to present it as authentic, because it's kind of difficult to explain to people who haven't watched the movie, but it's not really about rock climbing, right?
Yeah.
And it just happens to rock climbers who are in the middle of their day job. And I just thought that, you mentioned Free Solo. When I saw Free Solo, I was just blown away about that accomplishment and what he
Mhm.
did. And I saw a review where someone called it the best horror movie they'd ever seen, and they were kind of being serious about it.
Yeah.
And it sort of
Yeah.
clicked about like, oh, there's a lot of people who have a fear of heights. And maybe if I set a kind of like a horror suspense in the side of a big wall rock climb, it would just kind of incorporate some built-in anxiety and tension and raise the stakes just because of the environment they were in.
Oh, for sure. And you had, not to, I won't give too many spoilers, but I think it was the second, like, I won't call it possession, but either way, when she was like skittering along the rock wall, I almost had a heart attack. I was like, that ain't for me, my man. That was scary.
Yeah, I mean, you're always trying to for this particular one, find the challenge was to go back a little bit to your previous question about bringing in the pro rock climbers, and yes, they absolutely did consult the cast,
Yeah.
and we had a pro climbing consultant on set at all times. Our riggers were pro climbers. Most of the climbing cast, even though they're actors, have personal background experience in rock climbing. We look for people who had that in their personal lives because it's difficult to train somebody in just a couple of weeks to be a world-class rock climber. It takes years and years and years to learn these skills and the muscle memory to act like you know what you're doing. So
Yeah.
absolutely, we brought those people and put them in. Then it became a challenge to get back to what you were just talking about of how do we make it exciting up there without doing the Chris O'Donnell jump and vertical limit for one rock face to another? The rules were put in place that no climber could do anything that wasn't humanly possible, that wasn't
Mhm.
possible. So then you got to think of ideas like, oh, well, how do we make this exciting, right? And
Yeah.
so people will see that sometimes those rules get broken, but there's a good reason for it, right? So,
Yeah.
um, and the other thing about was coaching the actors of when they should be afraid, because to them, for someone like yourself, you're probably going to be afraid a lot about being hanging on a rope 1,000 feet in
Mhm.
the air, right? They're not afraid of that. That's again a normal day at the office. When you see some of the things that were going on with possessed people, that's when they instill reactions. So we had to walk that line of like, even though the audience is uncomfortable being at these heights, the climbers aren't. And
Mhm.
so they needed to not to react and feel, not scared until it was time to be, like, well, I'm scared.
Right. And you mentioned that and about the landscape, and you had some really really awesome shots of just like the mountain and just the landscape, the view of it. Did did filming that in terms of rock climbing pose any interesting like hardships in terms of actually getting an angle or a certain like, hey, we have to remember they're in the air. You know what I mean? Like, was there any like challenges there in terms of just filming it? Getting,
Yeah, it was very challenging. Early on, I quickly realized that I couldn't get the images that I wanted to get with a traditional
yeah,
film. It's just not possible on our budget level and what we wanted to show. Um, that they wouldn't go near that kind of stuff, right? They're
yeah,
not.
yeah.
My first AD is gonna be like, I'm calling my DGA rep right now. We're not going anywhere near that. So, I essentially made two movies at once. We made a traditional studio movie with a cast and a traditional film crew, and we also made a straight rock climbing movie with professional rock climbers and a
Mhm.
professional rock climbing crew. And so when we were up there, is this place called Liberty Bell in Washington State. The drone operator, Sean Haverstock, is a rock climber himself. And having that knowing what looks cool to rock climbers with your drone operator was a very big key because those shots,
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily, I wish I could say I was in control and directing him. I wasn't. I mean, I was standing next to him, but I'm a fan of hiring talented people and letting them do their job, right? And he
Mhm.
knew the shots we wanted to get, but having a rock climber get those shots, some of the reveals or how it looks was very key. And so it's all tied into bringing professional rock climbers and professional rock climbing film crews in on the project so that we could present the climbing and get these shots. Because my elevator pitch for this has always been free solo times the thing. And
Sure.
not because there's people free soloing El Cap, but the way that movie was shot and how it
Hmm.
looks, right?
Hmm.
It's terrifying. He's up there. I mean, there's nothing more terrifying than El Cap, let's be honest. It's 3,500 feet. There's nothing bigger in the country than that. We asked to shoot in El Cap. It's in a national park. They said
Yeah.
no, enough, right? But those kind of shots, I think, are what places the audience in that on that climb. You know, if we had just been in the studio like a lot of budgeted films like this is, you just it just doesn't build the world the way it should have been.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Um, and I'd be remiss not to bring it up because I see all the music stuff behind you. You sprinkled in a Tenacious D reference with Kyle Gass in there. I thought that was a lot of fun. Was that by design, or you're just like, hey, he's a good actor, let's throw him in there? Like,
I used to be a roadie for bands when I was younger, and it's just always music is like a core thing for me. Like this is just a personal
sure,
music studio. I don't do it professionally. I just love it.
yeah,
And I worked with Tenacious D 25 years ago, and I personally love Tenacious D. I know they're not for everybody,
yeah,
but I love them. And so a lot of times when you're casting, you bundle with agents. And so at the time, Kyle was represented by the same agent who represents David Clennon and who represents Jocelyn Houdon, who is now stars on Chicago Fire. At the time in this film, she didn't. But so like I just kind of bundled them all at once and was like, we'll do this. But yeah, I mean, I, who doesn't love Elf? If someone doesn't like Elf, I question your movie sensibility. And you know, Kyle's a minor character in that, but he's still great. He's even on Seinfeld, right? You know, like
yeah.
if you pay attention, Kyle pops up in the whole places for the last 30 years, right? So it was great. It was great to have Kyle. I mean, obviously this is a pretty small role for him and stuff, but super great to have him there.
It was fun. I remember watching and I was like, is that Kyle Gass? Like it was just I was like, oh, it's him. That's pretty neat.
And that's his, like, we shot that inside his house. And my my wife always points out the little cat that's behind him. That's his cat. And just as like like we had to take like 20 takes because his cat kept on jumping up behind him and coming over to him in the middle of it. It's good stuff.
That's awesome. With this being such a unique film, do you have like a favorite memory, either by like filming or some like random occurrence in nature? Anything that
You know, it's tough. You know, probably at the time I can think about it, but like, you know, this has been 3 years, right? So
Oh, fair.
it's for a filmmaker, it just takes so much longer than you know, the cast comes in, they get a little bit of prep, then they do their thing, and then you've got to ring them a year and a half later. Hey, remember that rock climbing horror movie that we shot 2 years ago? Yeah, we're releasing. Yeah, come on, let's do promotion, right? Or the crew, you know, works on it for 30 days and then goes to the next project, goes to the next project. The
Yeah.
sound people, you know, this is called the sound. It has to sound good. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the great people at Lucasfilm and Skywalker Sound who did all the post work and just, I truly believe the Foley work, and particularly on this, should be nominated for some sort of award because it's amazing. They're one of the few sound studios who still actively have Foley studios and reproduce all those sounds live as opposed to like a bank of SFX, you know, little clips. So everyone has their little part to play, but me, it's been the day job for 3 years. So it's tough for me to pick out a certain point. But certainly there were fun. We had a lot of fun. SAG strike, you know, not withstanding, but we had a lot of fun, and that's key on a production, right? If people aren't having fun, your chances of having a good movie at the end of it drastically decrease. It's not impossible. Plenty of good movies have had shit storm sets, right? But it makes it harder. And certainly for an independent, lower budget independent film, it makes it extremely difficult if people aren't happy. So you have really good catering. You don't go into overtime. My personal thing is I don't do overtime. There's no 15, 16-hour days on my sets. We do bankers hours Monday through Friday, you know, unless there's night shoots. Everybody hates night, but you have to have them, right? So it's just about building your production and treating people with respect, and turnaround times are huge. You've got guilds involved, right? You know, and I've got to make sure everybody's happy. So I'd say some of the highlights were being on Liberty Bell and shooting that second unit stuff was amazing to be up there. When we shot Alex Honnold and Brett Harrington in what's called the Rainbow Wall outside of Vegas, I broke
That
three.
was super neat. Yeah.
Yeah, I broke 3 ribs that day out there, and so not my favorite memory, but certainly stuck in my mind
It's a memory. Yeah,
that I broke
for
three
sure.
ribs on that one. It just, it's just great. We put together a great cast to work with, good people and good crew, and it was just fun all around.
Yeah, and the premiere, I would assume, was awesome. It was a lot of fun since
Yeah,
you've been,
yeah,
yeah.
we had our premiere last night in Vegas at the Beverly Theater. Most of our cast was able to come, and we had a bunch of influencers and stuff like that. We're Las Vegas based. It was more of like a Las Vegas kind of theme.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want to come party in the strip, after a movie premiere? So that was fun.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And your film is in theaters as well as video on demand, right? There's a whole list of
Yes,
stuff.
it's just
Yeah,
select theaters around the country, LA, here in Vegas, Denver, New York City, the kind of the standard ones. And then it'll be out on Prime and Apple and Fandango and all the other digital outlets starting, I guess, tomorrow. It's the big
that's
day.
awesome. Yeah. And I heard you're working on the sequel, uh, Sound 2, Electric Boogaloo. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I actually remember watching Break Into Electric Boogaloo.
Good.
As I'm old. Well, here's the thing, right? As the old adage goes, there's no business without the show, and there's no show without the business.
Mhm.
So we'll see how the sound does, and if there's an opportunity. The story's there. It's a higher budget film where it's set in like Lofoten, Norway, and the Dolomites, and
Oh,
wingsuit dogfights, and it's fairly epic on paper. So that we'll see what happens.
well, I'm in. And Brendan, it was wonderful talking with you. I can't wait to interview you for the Sound 2, whatever you decide to name it. And
Yeah,
I
that's
hope.
I always hated the name, the sound, because I'm terrible at naming titles. And we took a poll on the set. I was like, can anyone please come up with a better title? The first draft script is called The Climb. That tells you how original I was, because this is like, we'll just call it The Climb. And that was like way too on the nose. So the sound is just slightly less on the nose.
I mean, you could have said like the top, which would be very confusing too. So I mean, I'm glad you did
Yeah. We
it.
came up with someone came up with like, will you scream? Will you scream when you fall? Like that, I thought that was okay. That was kicked around a little bit, but at the same time, you
I feel
know,
like you had to lean more into a slasher movie if you're going to use that type of title. Like, I
I
feel
know
like
you
there's
did last summer.
more.
So
Yeah, like, yeah.
so yeah, this is definitely for people out there. This is not a slasher. If you want to see blood and guts all over your screen, this isn't it. If you want to be creeped and suspensed out, and if you're afraid of heights, this is your film.
I very much agree. I can stamp that approval. Cool. Well, it was wonderful talking with you, Brendan.
Thanks
I
so
can't wait to
much.
talk to you again. Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
thank you.
Thanks.